You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show. The preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Moses Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go. The operator makes it official, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. You know, we changed the format of COVID, or the format of the podcast over COVID, because we wanted to improve the world. We were talking about a lot of tech and CEOs and all this sort of good stuff. And we're like, you know what? We want to open the scope of the show to talk about everything to make the world a better place, to give people inspiration, to give people positivity, to give people tools that they can use to lead them out of the darkness of what goes on in our world and the challenges. And I can't think of a more challenging time that we're currently going through right now, what we're seeing in our world and our news and everything else. But the beautiful part about the Chris Voss Show podcast, if I can do a little self-indulgent pitch here that helps others, is it gives you a respite from the world. It gives you a respite from the dark news, and it gives you tools. We give you advice. The authors that we have on, the people that we have on the Chris Voss Show, have all the different aspects that they bring to you from all walks of life to help improve your life, make it better, improve the quality of the life around you, and hopefully all give us, different things that we can utilize to make the world a better place, and to hopefully leave the world a better place behind us. So I hope that you recognize that, those of you who tune into the Chris Voss Show, and some of the new people that are always tuning in, especially coming in from the LinkedIn newsletter. We hope that you recognize that, because that's what the show's for. We are a respite and a bulwark against the evil and the darkness that's in the world, and hopefully we're a positive light and inspiration to you. And if not, send me an email and tell us how we can do better. We have an amazing guest on the show. She's an author, as always. We have these amazing minds for 15 years. We brought you the CEO, the billionaires, the astronauts, the Pulitzer Prize winners, all of the smartest people on the planet, and none of them are me. That's why we have them as guests on the show, because they're the people who bring the show up. She's the author of the latest book that came out August 7th, 2023. On second thought, maybe I can. Debbie Weiss is with us on the show for her book, and I love it. It's a memoir of her life, a transformational story of overcoming obstacles and living out your wildest dreams. Although my psychiatrist and the judge says I can't live out some of my wildest dreams, but that's for another episode. We'll talk about that another time. Debbie Weiss has over 50 years of experience in dealing with some of life's toughest challenges. She is an expert in chasing her own dreams in spite of her circumstances. She is the best-selling author of the memoir On Second Thought, Maybe I Can, as well as an author in the Amazon bestseller collaborative book Heart Whispers. In addition, she is an entrepreneur running both an insurance agency and her online store, Sprinkle of Hearts, and host of the Maybe I Can podcast. She's an inspirational speaker, family caregiver, and mother, which is probably, the greatest job anyone can do in this world. Debbie has overcome her own limiting beliefs and fears, allowing her to begin to live her best life, and her life's passion is to help and inspire others to do the same. She's a best-selling author of the memoir. In her spare time, she loves to laugh, dance, read, and stay active. And now she's going to be doing all that on the Chris Voss Show. Welcome to the show, Becky. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to do all that. Am I going to dance?
There you go. I'm going to have to do a correction of sound and edit. Evidently, I called you
Becky.
whatever.
I know.
Yeah. My bad. I was flying there just through the bio, and I was so proud of myself. But that'll end up on the cutting room floor. So Debbie, give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Sure. It's DebbieRWeiss.com. The R, very important. Otherwise, you wind up on a realtor.
You got that competition going, huh?
Oh, yeah. She's got that website probably, I guess, when URLs first started to be for sale.
Yeah, I've had the same problem with 2 or 3 Chris Vosses. There's a few of us that are out there. So give us a 30,000 overview of your book that you just put out.
Sure. So it's my memoir. It's a story about stopping stopping using your circumstances to rule your life. So I had a victim mentality. I had a lot of limiting beliefs, felt like my life was really rough and it was unfair. And because of that, it was what it was, and there was nothing I could do about it. And then I had an epiphany and realized wrong. We all can do something. We can all be in control of the path of our lives, regardless of our circumstances. And so the last half of the book, or the last third of the book, I should say, talks about that transformation that I'm still on, and we're all still on, that has been happening since my epiphany about 10 years ago.
Wow. And you had this epiphany when you turned 50 and you decided that that would change your life. Give us a lead up to that. What was your journey like through life? What were the paths you were taking and some of the different obstacles you overcame?
So I became a caregiver to my father when I was 17.
Hmm.
He had a massive stroke. He was only 45 and he
Wow.
survived. My parents soon were divorced, and my dad never lived with me, but luckily he did survive for 30 years, and
Oh.
I was his main person. So I was
Mhm.
in charge of his money and his shopping and where he was going to live. And in my 20s, I learned all about private disability and Medicare and Medicaid and all of these things. And you know, that's not what my friends were doing at 25 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to grow up fast.
Very fast, and have that role reversal. I think when we're in our 40s and 50s, we expect to, now all of a sudden we're more of the parent to our parents and they're the
Mhm.
child. But I lost my dad in that role at a very
Mhm.
young age and had that switch. And, after that, I struggled with infertility. I had, a whole bunch of things. But when my oldest son was born, he was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum when he was 2.
Oh,
And
wow.
then that led to, years of trying to figure that out. And
Mhm.
then more recently, my husband, who had suffered from mental illness, depression, and anxiety, but it never affected his life. Later on in his life, it really started to have an effect.
Mhm.
But he was no longer able to work. He also had a lot of
Wow.
physical issues. And so I kind of lost my partner, and now had yet another person to take care of.
Yeah.
And after all of that, he was diagnosed out of the blue with a terminal blood cancer
Oh, no.
diagnosis unrelated to his other issues.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, almost 10 months ago, he passed away. It was
I'm
6 months
sorry.
after he was diagnosed.
I'm sorry to hear that. Do you think that maybe this book and stuff was born out of these experiences and trying to get through them and overcome them and find the positive side of the coin in the end?
Absolutely, because like I said, for so long, I didn't. I was always a positive, upbeat person, so I don't want to make
Mhm.
it sound like I was a Debbie Downer.
No.
But I wasn't. But,
Mhm.
it was always, "Oh, poor Debbie. Oh, what's happening to Debbie now?" I would compare myself to others, and I felt like, I got the raw end of the deal, in
Mhm.
my life. Of course, you could always find a ton of other people who've had much, much, big
Mhm.
trauma and all of that, but luckily, I wasn't living in that world, and comparing myself to the others around me, it
Mhm.
just felt like I don't know why this is my lot in life, just one thing after another, but it is. And I don't have a choice. And, I'm just going to ride it out and kind of let my life control me instead of me controlling my life.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, you've into every life or some rain must fall, but you seem to have gotten some extra rain there. But it may have given you tools that maybe you've found that can more empower you and help empower others with what you do with your coaching to handle it. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. I
Hmm.
think most of us, when we look back on
Hmm.
the things that happened in our life, we realize the valuable lesson that they taught us and we wouldn't change a thing.
Hmm.
And I can say that because as a child, I was extremely fearful. I was afraid of being judged. I always had a weight problem, and that it dominated my life for a very long time, especially as a young girl in particular. And I didn't want to be seen because I didn't want to be judged. And so, even though I was very outgoing to those that I knew, I was not in any other type of situation. And so when my dad got sick, it kind of forced me out of my comfort zone to learn to speak up because I wasn't speaking up on my behalf. I was speaking up for my dad, and I wanted to make sure that I did whatever I could for him. And so that kind of was the beginning of giving me these tools.
Hmm.
Certainly, my book and my coaching, is a culmination of everything that I've learned and everything that I've learned since I had that quote unquote epiphany around the age of 50.
So what was the thing that made that trigger that epiphany at 50?
So my friends insisted that we go away for my birthday on a girls' trip, four of
Hmm.
us. And I didn't want to because I was afraid that my family would crumble without me, even for 2 or 3 days.
Hmm.
But I said, okay. And the minute that we got to the airport and we met and we were laughing, all of those fears that I had just dropped away. And I don't want to say that I couldn't care what was happening at home, but I really couldn't care what was happening at home. And it was the first time in forever that I was the priority. People
Yeah.
were asking me, "Where do you wanna go to dinner? What do you wanna do today?" It's almost like I'm looking over my shoulder. Are they talking to me? And one night while we were there, we're having a discussion and something came up, and I asked them, "Did I used to be known for my laugh?" Because I kinda have this really loud cackle that I won't let come out. And
No, let it out. This is a
no.
funny show. Please
And
do.
they looked at me like, "Are you kidding me?" Because I was. My mother used to say, "I never lose you because I can always hear you laughing somewhere, wherever you are." And I realized, like, I was serious. I couldn't remember if I was making that up or it was true. And I realized, you know what? I lost myself. I've lost who I was as a person.
Mhm.
I lost my laugh and I
Yeah.
lost it all. And I think it was something about the age of 50 that
Mhm.
kind of was like, "Oh, is that really middle life? I hope to live to 100, but, let's just say that I'm on the downhill slide." And that idea of more mortality, bleh, motivation kind of kicked in like, am I going to be laying there on my deathbed having regrets? Because I saw that with my dad.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person. But
Mhm.
if my time were up now, I would be because I don't regret and I didn't regret doing anything that I did for anybody else. But what I regretted was not also making myself a priority.
Yes. Yes. There's two things there that are really important that people should listen to and learn from. Number one is recognize that if you are a caregiver in some sort of way, and even if you're like, moms are really bad at this, where they give so much, they eat last, they're always taking care of everyone first. But if you're a caregiver specifically, especially for someone in hospice or someone who needs a whole lot of attention and work, you have to take care of yourself first, or you can't share yourself or help other people. You have to get your sleep. You have to get your health straight. You have to eat right. It's so emotionally draining to be a caregiver. It's so physically draining usually to be a caregiver as well. And a lot of people who are caregivers don't realize they really need a lot of help. I spent a year and a half in hospice care with my dog. It was psychologically destructive. It was damaging. It was hard on me. I should have sought better help. I should have been seeing a therapist at the time. Watching cancer grow on something you love is a whole different experience than just knowing someone has cancer. Uh, And I see it in other people, like my mother, who takes care of my sister, who has MS. She's 7 years younger than me, and she's in a home with people that are much older. And you look at it and you go, "Why is this young person here?" She's the only one of her age that's in that home. But being a caregiver is draining. It is some of the hardest things I've ever seen or ever done in my life. It's rewarding, and you feel good, but there's so many aspects of it that people forget about. And then I think the second point is at 50, I think you kind of realize you're either halfway through the football game, if you don't mind the sports analogy,
Not at
or
all.
game, if you would call it anything. You're halfway through the bachelor rounds. Um, yeah, and you realize that the maybe the second half is shorter than the first half, and that you're running out of time. And I think also at 50, you kind of look back, because I had the same sort of epiphanies around 50. You kind of you reach a point where you can go, all right, let's look back at what do we do, and you start to see the patterns. You start to see, oh wow, okay, that childhood trauma there. I've been dragging that through the detritus for 50 years, and I can see the whole pathway of dragging the anvil through everything, and maybe I should dump that thing. And so I think those are two things people really need to recognize from the story you tell. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And let me just interject. Jets, Jets. You can talk about football anytime you want.
Okay, go go Jets.
The
If
Go
we could
Jets.
if we could bring back who is the great Jet in the quarterback in the
Oh,
70s?
Joe Namath.
Joe Namath. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in the 70s, and I've always been a Raiders fan, but he was so freaking epic. He was just such a great, I mean, just on and off the field. What a guy.
Exactly. Yeah. I think he was probably one of those like first big football
Oh, yeah.
personalities, right? That
Yeah.
overtook with his commercials and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
It
The
wasn't
fur
so,
coats, I think it
yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Diamonds. He was just so over the top. It was a great era of football.
Yeah.
So people need to understand that self-care is so important, and that principle of you can't give to other people, you can't help other people unless you take care of yourself first. And you need timeouts too if you're doing self-care. And how was your relationship with your mother? How supportive was your mother, if you don't mind me asking, in you ending up being the caregiver for your father?
So my mother was supportive in the sense that, initially she found the first place that my dad lived.
Mhm.
Um, she was supportive in the sense of like on holidays, if if I wasn't with him, he would be left in, actually similar to your sister. He was living in those kinds of facilities in
Mhm.
his late 40s and everybody else was in their 80s.
Mhm.
And, so she was very supportive in that regard. Um, but, I think, I don't know. I mean, let's just say she was supportive, but she didn't really have much intervention with what was going on.
Mhm.
Certainly, if I had a question or whatnot,
Yeah.
of course, she was always there.
And I just bring that up to frame it that, here you are, you're a young woman, and young women, especially in their 20s, early 20s, they go through whole different changes as to who they are year by year. And you're in a role where normally, you look to a parent to be that protector, that provider, that caregiver, that overseer, that kind of bulwark to build your life off of. And here you're thrust into, and this happens with a lot of young people that end up being, having to grow up early or being a parent early, is they kind of lose that portion of their childhood. They kind of lose that building of themselves, and understanding themselves, and care for themselves as well. And so it's a tough position to be in, because you're not always emotionally equipped at that age to deal with all this sort of stuff. You're still trying to figure out your own world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My dad met a woman when he was living at that first place, and I knew that the woman was just trouble.
Hmm.
She thought my father had money. He had no money. My
Wow.
father winds up marrying the woman, moving out of the place that my mother had to, like, back then, this is like mid 80s. The kind of facilities that are available now, they weren't around back then. So it was very difficult, especially because my dad was living on Medicare and,
Mhm.
very small disability insurance. And the woman started verbally abusing my dad.
Yeah. Wow.
And at when I was around 25, I had to steal him
Wow.
and take him to, I don't want to say an undisclosed location to her. I had to find
Mhm.
a place for him to live and set up this whole thing, this
Yeah.
kidnapping, so to speak. But then the big thing was, here I was trying to figure out to learn to get him divorced. And
Wow.
I didn't even have a boyfriend. And I was learning how to get divorced at 25.
There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a crazy story,
It
and
was
and
crazy.
yeah, and you're a young person going, why is this my thing?
Mhm.
But it's that's a hell of a challenge. We see that in the care centers where people try and prey on each other in the care centers,
Yep.
sexually or financially. They'll try and figure out someone that has money, and it's a scary, interesting dynamic in there. And when you have a sister or someone who has dementia, and everyone's got dementia, it's just some of the stuff that goes on there. I mean, she's been through 5 or 6 homes,
Mm.
and so and elder abuse, which it sounds like what your dad was going through there. Patient abuse. I mean, all this stuff is prevalent in some of these different care situations, and you're just trying to care for somebody and do the thing. So, so with your epiphany that you have at 50, how do you start? How do you start taking back you? How do you start re-identifying you and taking care of you to where how do you go down that journey of like putting yourself back together, basically?
So when I returned from the trip, I don't think it was, I come home and say, "Oh, now I've seen the light and here's, how I'm
Yeah.
going to set out on my path." I
If
wish
only it
it
was
had.
that easy, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But looking back, I can see what happened, and then the first thing that I decided that I was going to tackle was my weight, because I have had a lifelong weight issue, and at that point, I was probably 100 pounds overweight.
Hmm.
And so what I did was, for the millionth time, I went back to Weight Watchers, which, I've tried all diets just like many of us.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that's what had worked for me in the past. But this time I changed my mindset, because I used to always go and say, okay, I have to lose 25 pounds in 3 months, or by the summer, or by this wedding I'm going to attend. And if I don't, I'm out. And I could see how well that served me at 100 pounds to lose. So instead, this time I said, the only goal that I have is attending a meeting every week. That's it. Nothing else, nothing about my food, nothing about how much weight I lose. I am just going to show up. And that's what I did. I really didn't lose much weight. But once I got that down, then I added the next layer. Okay, 50% of the time, I'm going to track my food, or whatever it was. And just slowly building. And I'd watch other people. They're like, it was hard, because I'd go to these meetings and they're
Yeah.
like, I lost 30 pounds in 4 months. And I'm like, well, I lost 3 in 6 months. I describe myself as a turtle, although I can get up off my back. But I was, slow and steady wins the race kind of thing.
And it's
And
a and an important aspect of this is people have to realize it's a process. Not only are
yeah,
you learning about yourself, you're learning about this thing. It's a mastery of skill, and it's time. And some people can do stuff quicker. That, or I don't know. There's always cocaine. That's always good for losing weight.
yeah.
So maybe those other people are on cocaine. We'll just throw it to that. Whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't do cocaine, people, for losing weight. Please don't start a cold over the podcast jokes. But everyone's different too. They have different metabolisms. You have different DNA. It seems like a lot of this does come down to DNA. You have different things where people have different insulin resistance and stuff, depending upon how you've lived your life. So really the thing that people should judge themselves by is by themselves and the way that they're going through things and way they're and just the fact you're making progress. Like I like what you said. I focused on just showing up, and for a lot of things, going to the gym, losing weight, just about any sort of thing you want to achieve in life, becoming an entrepreneur, just showing up is usually half the battle because most people don't do that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And what I realized was Weight Watchers didn't change their program, right? I mean, yeah, they do little tweaks every couple of years. What was different was just the way I thought about it. It was just a
Yeah.
mindset shift, which,
Mhm.
I say just, it ain't that easy to do. And it's a constant work in progress. But when I saw, oh, wait a minute, I did realize I'm not coming off this.
Mm.
Like I'm I have to commit. This is for life. This doesn't
Mhm.
mean I can't eat pizza again. This doesn't, I had to understand that all those people that I would look at and say, oh, poor me, another example of how I had a victim mentality.
Mhm.
I would see someone eating a certain way and I'd see, oh, look at them. They can eat that. And if look at that, I'm going to gain weight. Well, I don't know what they're eating the other, however many meals it is a week, the other 20 meals a week, right? This
Mhm.
could like be, their 20%, their indulgent time. But I
Yeah.
was thinking, no, that wasn't the case. And so over the past 10 years, it's just kind of been learning how
Yeah.
to you know, think differently about it and not
Mhm.
having that perfectionist mindset or
Mm.
and that I'm on the diet, I'm off the diet. Nope. That's why, my kids used to laugh at me when they would say something about my diet. And I'd say, I'm not on a diet. This is my lifestyle.
There you go.
And they still
That's
laugh. Mom, is
well,
that cookie fit on your lifestyle? Yes,
oh,
it does. Thank you so very much for pointing that out.
well, at least you have some accountability crew
Yeah.
there. It's always good to have the accountability people to give you a shit, keep you in line, keep you a little bit honest, let you know they're
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
The I've used accountability groups to help me write books, help me stay on my diet, help me go to the gym. Sometimes I'll just post on Facebook that, hey, I'm at the gym today, and so that people are like, yeah, he's at the gym, and sometimes it helps inspire others. There's an aspect to that too. But you bring up a good point. The hardest thing for me to learn, and I really had the hardest time with it, was people that would always say to me, "It's Chris, it's not," because I had that perfectionist thing you mentioned. They'd say, "Chris, it's not about the journey, or it's not about the end goal, it's about the journey." And and I was a results oriented person. I'm like, I want it now, and I want it done now, and I want to do it now, and I want to achieve it now. And it used to make me mental when people say that. I almost want to physically do something to them. Like, it's, hey, Chris, you need to calm down. It's not about the end. It's about the journey, man. And it took me probably most of my life to get through what that message meant. And what you guys are in, you understand now, that it just isn't going to happen overnight. It's the journey. You've got to develop yourself and grow through it, and build that thing. And it is a lifestyle. You bring up some good points that people, they do a diet. They're like, well, I'm going to do a diet for a few weeks and lose some weight, and then I'm going to go back to eating McDonald's and going to buffets.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Your metabolism slows over the course of a lifetime. It doesn't improve, it slows. And it just gets worse. So you've just got to get better. You
Exactly.
just got to meet it in the middle somehow or beat it. But even then, I think we get smarter at taking care of our bodies. And then we also learn that, you can't do all the stuff you used to do when you were young and you used to produce all that collagen and, all the different things that keep you alive at the, advanced cell growth. And so you've got to start taking better care of the ship you're on, because it's the only one you
It's the
get.
only one you got. Yep.
There you
That's for
go.
sure.
So now let's talk about what you do with coaching. Do you mostly work with women, and what sort of advice do you give them and help for coaching and tools?
So, yes, I do mostly work with women. I Nothing against men. I love men. I live in a family of men.
Oh.
I have 2 sons, and of course, I had my husband, and I even have a dog that's a male. Why I didn't get a female dog, at least so I wasn't in the minority, I don't know. But so, yes, I do work with women and I help them. We each have to discover. I didn't even understand what the term limiting beliefs was,
Oh.
until I entered this world. I, my target are really women who are just learning what personal development is. Like, I just thought that that was a bunch of mumbo jumbo that no people, only a certain type of person paid attention to,
Mm,
not really realizing how life changing it is to learn some of these skills.
mm,
And I think what we do have to understand is that we are all born with these limiting beliefs, and we need to kind of explore them and understand them, and figure out a way to flip that switch on those beliefs. And then to discover, I didn't even know, okay, well, what do I want to be, do, have when I grow up? And I'm 50 something and I had no idea. We're always evolving,
mhm,
and so we're different people. Although I have to say that as a child, I always wanted to be a teacher. And my mother was a teacher, and she was not meant to be a teacher. But and she soon discovered that and became something else.
there you go.
However, she said to me, "You're the first generation of women who can go to college and be whatever you want to be. You don't have to be a teacher or a nurse." Not that there's anything wrong with being a teacher or a nurse, but those were really the only choices for women, back in the 50s and 60s when my mom went to school. And so she kind of pushed me away from the teacher deal, and I became an accountant and then an insurance agent. And now I find myself, what do I want to do? What's coaching? It's teaching.
Mm,
And so it's interesting to me that, what I felt as a little girl
mhm,
really was what my passion and my purpose is. Maybe I'm not a classroom teacher,
mhm,
but now, you know, I get to teach other women, how to find their passion and their potential, and really figure out what is the life that you want. And the accountability piece that you spoke of, to me, I don't know if I could have accomplished anything that I have without having somebody hold me accountable. And it's just, there's something different. There's something different, just like you said, even if it's posting in a Facebook group or on your Facebook page, saying it out loud. I remember when I don't want to even say this because I'll get booed, but I was a smoker back in the day. It wasn't like it is now. And I loved it.
yeah.
I didn't want to quit. Everybody else, it was like, oh, and now it would had become, like, oh, this is really no good for you.
Mhm,
And I was about 27 and I got really sick with mono, very sick.
mm.
And I was still smoking. And one day I'm sitting there by myself and I'm like, I can't even like breathe. What am I doing here? I'm going to just put it down and, for 2 hours or whatever it was. And I actually didn't smoke for 6 days.
Wow.
But I said I didn't tell anyone, because if I told someone, now I was going to be accountable. Now they were
Mm.
going to expect me to quit the minute I put it out there. So I didn't, until I made the decision, I'm going to do it. And then I shared it.
Oh, wow. There's some people that tell people what they do, and there's some psychology that when people tell others what they do, their brain thinks they've completed it. It's kind of weird. I read some sort of paper on that one time. It was kind of interesting. So when you help women, what do you find most women are coming to you with their problems for, that they're seeking you out, and you're usually coaching and helping them with?
They don't, they need to rediscover who they are, other than being two different types, I would say, other than being the mother, the caregiver, a woman who's midlife and has spent most of her adult life worried about everybody else and not realizing or feeling like she deserved time to herself, or had the excuse that she couldn't because she was so busy helping everybody else and helping her discover that no, there is time.
Mm.
The other audience that I have tapped into that I have to be honest is kind of unexpected is
Mm.
young women. You know, young women who are just trying to figure it out and
Mm.
figure out their path in life. And I love that now younger women are more attuned to that instead of doing what society or their family or whoever else, the other people in their lives feel that is expected of them.
Mm.
They kind of, want to figure out, no, what is it? What is it that I want? And how do I establish goals and set the course?
There you go. Yeah, it's a hard journey today for people in the world, especially the young people, the Gen Zers. There, it's a tumultuous time. I suppose I don't know what's the old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I think we're all kind of born into tumultuous times and tough times, but I don't know economically wise, and everyone's still waiting for trickle down economic checks from the '80s. There's a lot of interesting things going on in our economy, but then there's a lot of grand opportunity too to take from it. I look at I talk to my young nephew, and there's so many great opportunities he has, and the amount of information that he has in recognizing stuff. I talked to him about collecting stories and uh, and watching through life, and I talked to him about doing what they call the T sort of aspect of business, where go learn something really well and master it and become really good at it, and then go teach others how to do it. And that seems to be a model a lot of people do now with coaching and everything else. And I remember talking to him about it the other week, and he goes, "So I can write a book like you, right? I can collect stories and write a book like you." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, there you
There you
go."
go.
And he's like 23, and he's got more information and more data than he knows. He probably has just encyclopedia knowledge about so much stuff. I mean, that you can access on the internet that we never had. Me, I was just trying to listening to Party Line to see what was going on. That's my only connection to the world back
Oh,
then.
that's so
And
funny. Yeah.
three channels, and then one that had black and white Godzilla on it. That's
Yep,
basically how our world
exactly.
was.
Yep.
So yeah, we didn't. It was smoke signals or our internet or something. I don't know.
That's right.
Um,
Antennas on the TV.
yeah, but even then, it's so overwhelming because at least for us, we could slowly take in the world because it wasn't so much coming at you. You can you get on the internet, and it's an open express lane to just about everything that can come at you. And just like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff here. And so I can see how overwhelming it is for people their age, and hopefully they're a little bit more equipped for it. But yeah, trying to figure out who they are, who they want to be. There's so much confusion now between who men and women are, what they are, where they're going, what their roles are. And I imagine young women have a lot of issues with that. And there's all sorts of great examples of how to be good people in the world and bad people in the world, and what does it mean? And sometimes it seems like all the bad, evil people win. We see that on news and politics and other thing, and you're like, see, geez, is anybody a good person anymore? And so you're
Yeah.
trying to balance, who do I want to be and how do I want to be, and am I doing it right, and is there right? And it's just a really confusing time, which it's already confusing when you're young.
Oh gosh. And really, I think what's missing and hopefully I think it's becoming more prevalent is coming up with those soft skills or those exercises that help you
Mhm.
really tap into who you are, what you want to do. My youngest son is actually a junior in college,
Mm.
and he is he's got his eye on a prize that I think he's trying to fit himself into a mold that he feels, not me, is
Mm.
expected of him or that will serve him best, maybe financially moving forward. instead of, and I keep urging him is, let's really figure out, what do you want? And he just feels, I don't know what I want, or this is what I want, or leave me alone with that kind of stuff. Um, so I feel like saying, no, no, you're not going to be a good example for me if I'm supposed to be, a coach that helping transform people, and you're going to go out and do something that I don't know if it feeds your soul, but I guess we'll see. Because you know what? I've kind of resigned myself. That's how you learn. You can't tell anyone what
Yeah,
to do, right? He has to experience for himself. And maybe that is, his direction is the right path for him.
there you go.
Although mothers, you do know best.
Well, I mean, let's not push it. Uh, I'm kidding. I mean, the one thing that are great about mothers is they love you, and they usually love you unconditionally. Most people, if you're lucky and you got a mother that puts up with your stupid stuff, God bless mothers. But I don't know about mothers knowing best. My mom's a great mother, and I love her. But sometimes I might know a little bit better. But
Mm, I guess.
uh, but we'll give them let's say 75% times. Does that sound like
Okay.
a fair
All right, that's
negotiation?
fair. I'll give you that.
Mother wants what's best for you 100% of the
That
time. I
is
know that
true.
is very
Okay.
true. There you go.
That's true.
But it sounds like, his thing is just like your thing, and like what we talked about with the journey. It's all about the journey and not the destination. That's why I told my niece and nephew when they were graduating in life in in their school, and I've talked about this before on the show, so it's a callback. But look around, enjoy the journey, but collect stories. I mean, that's what we do on the Chris Voss Show. We're story collectors because the stories are the owner's manual to life. It's how we learn about life. We learn from each other's mistakes, each other's struggle, and our journeys, and it's interesting how much we learn. This is why we write books. This is why people read books. This is why people watch movies. They watch TV. Everything is story collecting. That's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out life and square things and learn things. Um, sometimes through just entertainment. You may see something as entertainment, but you might learn something from it. But everyone's on that journey, and yeah, I guess your son's on his journey, discover himself and figure stuff out. And it's interesting to me throughout my life on how many adventures I've gone on, and how many. I'll be like, hey, for 5 years, I want to be a cameraman. I want to be a photographer professionally, or maybe professionally. I don't know. Let's see how this works out. You spend a bunch of money, you toy around, you go learn something, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but the lessons you learn from that journey are the most important things that you can take to other things. And that's why that journey statement is so important, of people saying it's about the journey, not about the end goal, because the things you learn on the journey are some of the most important aspects that change your life. I remember Steve Jobs gave that commencement address, where he talked about how he hated college. He flunked out of college. He ditched out of college, basically. But he loved going to his course on, what was it, like fonts and calligraphy and writing and stuff like that, and how fonts were used and presented to stuff. And he was fascinated by that, and he would steal his way back into college just to take those classes. Well, one of the major proponents of selling aspects of the early Apple was the fact that you could do, you could go from typewriters to doing text scripts on the Apple thing. It was a huge selling point, and the fonts and being able to have those different ways of designing marketing or books or whatever you wanted to write was a huge seller for it. And who would have known? He didn't know at the time that that was going to be something that was going to be his thing. I never knew that all my stupid stories through life would make a book, or future books that I'm currently working on right now. And so it's all about that journey. So I think that's a really important aspect to people, what they can learn, and especially helping people through their life and what they want to accomplish with your coaching.
Absolutely. And I can say the same thing. When I wrote my memoir, I
Hmm.
thought, is just putting these stories, because in the end, what it wound up to be is a collection of 30 plus stories
Hmm.
that, tell an overall story. And
Hmm.
I felt like, does it need more? Does it need to have an explanation at the end of each story? And in the end, I decided no, because the stories stand on their own, and it's there for you to take what you need from each of the stories.
And
So,
it's interesting what people learn from. Like they just, you'll have somebody like, "Hey, I really like this story," and you're just like, "Seriously, that one?" Like
Yeah.
all the ones that are in there, that was the best one. But it's what identifies with them. It's kind of like when artists write music and lyrics and stuff, and people interpret them all different sorts of ways. But it's applicable to them, and it helps them. I've heard some people say things about a song or a story or a lyric, and they're just like, yeah, that's about this, and you're like, that's not really what it's about if you Google it on Wikipedia. But thanks for playing. But that's not what's important, right?
No,
It's important
definitely.
about how I interpret them. I've shared stuff about things that all of my different journey on Facebook and social media, and a lot of people, I've had people say, wow, I didn't, you sharing the closure with the death of your dogs or a parent made me realize I didn't get closure with my parent or a dog or cat or a pet. And now I've helped me cross. These are the ways that these stories are important. So I'm looking at your website. There's several different offerings you have, as well as coaching. You've got some a free PDF that can help with self-care on all the different aspects of self-care on life. You can there's the inner or unlock your inner power, a guide to embracing your true self as well. Tell us how people can onboard with you, find out if they're a good fit, reach out to you, and get involved with what you're doing with coaching.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, so my website is the best place, debbier.weiss.com. On there, there's a wait list for my coaching program that will be launching the end of November, beginning of December, and will be starting in January to get ready for a wonderful 2024. All of the downloads that you mentioned, as well as there's a couple of free chapters of my book that are on there as well. You can find everything on my website, and then there's contact information, or you can email me at debbie@debbierweiss.com, or DM me on Instagram, and there it is, debbie.r.weiss.
There you go. Well, Debbie, it's been fun to have you on. Very wonderful and great story. Thanks for sharing your touching stories, and I think giving people a lot of inspiration. More moms are such giving people. They give to everybody first, but they need to take care of themselves. They need to feed themselves. They need to make sure not only feed themselves, by not being the last to eat, but feed their soul, feed their ambitions. Take care of themselves first. You need time out. I mean, if you're the one advice I would give to people is if you're a caregiver, you need time out for yourself. I think that's what you identified when you went away on your girls trip is you need to take some time to refill your basket, your mental, physical, spiritual health basket, and go do things for yourself. I've learned I have to do that with even my work and what I do. There has to be time that I go take downtime or peace time or time to decompress and kind of reward myself and fulfill myself a little bit so I can come back refreshed and be like, okay, pat on the back. This is why we do this.
Absolutely. And I don't have it in front of me, but it's something like about 25% of caregivers wind
Hmm.
up having health problems
Yeah.
because they're not paying attention to themselves. And then what happens? You can't even be the caregiver that you wanted to be. So people think that self care is selfish, but it really is just the opposite. It's really
Hmm.
essential for you and for your loved ones.
It can grind you down. And
Yep.
so take care of yourself first, and then you can share yourself with others and build other people up. But unless you have that foundation, it's hard to build on that. Thanks you very much for coming on, Debbie. We really appreciate it. Thanks to my audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com forward slash Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com forward slash Chris Voss, YouTube.com forward slash Chris Voss, and Chris Voss one on the tickety tockety over there. Order up Debbie's book. On second thought, maybe I can just come out and published on August 7th, 2023. Thanks, Mountains, for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you.